The Tennis Gambling Podcast on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Onyx Fantasy. Go to 25 times your entry with their pick case on the promo code SGPN to come to special pick and first time deposit offer up to $2 bonus cash. Onyx Fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Rhythm is loaded with a ton of picks for the British Open. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com. Rhythm, sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. And welcome, everybody, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast here on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network. It is currently Saturday night, roughly 7:40 p.m. Eastern Time on July 20th. I'm your host, always, Scott Reichel, once again going solo for this pod. Should be a fun episode, bit of a shorter one, though, as we only have 4 matches to preview because it is final time in Bastad, Gstaad, Hamburg, and Newport. So we're going to preview all 4 matches in a second before we get into any of the actual previews. Do you want to care some housekeeping? I want to remind you once again to like and subscribe on YouTube. Also, a reminder, don't forget to rate and review the podcast on Spotify or Apple. So if you are still consuming the podcast audio only, then first of all, what are you waiting for? You can still hop over on YouTube. But if you do like your Spotify or Apple, I'd say, access to this podcast, then you can still leave a review and a rating to show some support. Besides that, though, a reminder to check out the SGPN merch store for some great Tennis Gambling Podcast merch. We have shirts, sweatshirts, and mugs. Here's a shirt, for example. So if you do like what you see here, you can get one for yourself in the SGPN merch store. Plus, we have other featured shows with the network, and the main featured show for the week is going to be the Mothership Show, the Sports Gambling Podcast, which is getting you ready for college football season, which is low-key about a month away. So keep that in mind. But they do have some college actual conference previews for you to watch to give you kind of a general basis of what to expect from each team in the conferences, not to mention the actual realignment that's happened that I'm sure a lot of people forgot about. Tune in wherever you do get your podcast, though, or on the SGPN app. So before we get into any of the actual preview of the Sunday matches, I want to recap what happened on Saturday, starting off with the lock and dog picks. Good news is that we continued our lock streak. The bad news is we did not sweep. The locks, though, have been very good since Wimbledon, basically, and we won again. We had Mickelson on the money line at minus 138. That was really a sweat-free winner. Mickelson was tied 2-2 in the first set with Opelka, and then won the last 10 games. So anytime you win 6-2, 6-0, and we get you at minus 138, you feel pretty good, and it feels like the odds makers were kind of asleep at the wheel on that one. Mickelson, though, dominated. I thought he'd be able to get enough returns of serve and play, and Opelka's not good enough at rallying to potentially win those longer points, and that's exactly what happened. Mickelson returned very well, and Opelka got destroyed. RIP the 80-1 shot we had in Opelka, but I said in the episode yesterday I was going to hedge, and we did with the lock pick. So nice win there with Mickelson. For the dog, though, picked up a loss. We had Baez and Fees over 2.5 sets at plus 130. Not even close, as Fees did dominate from start to finish and ended up winning the match 6-2, 6-2. So lost the dog for the second straight episode, but the lock streak continues. I have to go back and actually look at how many episodes we've won in a row with the locks, but it's been a lot. So hopefully we end up keeping that rolling here for the Sunday matches. To recap, though, what happened on Saturday, I already mentioned a couple of the matches, but Fees did beat Baez 6-2, 6-2. Zverev did beat Martinez 6-2, 6-4. Thought he'd win in straight sets. That was like minus 200. Didn't really see much value on the match at all. And I guess the under was the only way to play that one because Zverev dominated as he won 6-2, 6-4. We did lean to Nadal, but we did lean to the point to the actual spread for a Djokovic against Nadal, and he ended up covering despite losing the match in 3. Props to Nadal, though, for making it to a final this year, which is kind of shocking based on the amount of injuries and time that he's missed and the overall amount of hours he spent on the court recently. He looked great. I was right, though, about him dropping out of doubles in order to preserve the singles run, and that's what happened as him and Ruud ended up withdrawing from the event. But Nadal was going to prioritize singles, and now he's in a final right before the Olympics, which is pretty cool. Marathon match, though, not as long as the Navone match, but it was about 2 hours and change. And he did a good job of rallying after dropping the first set to the qualifier. And then you saw Borges beat Tarante comfortably as he won 6-3, 6-4. That one we did get wrong. Thought Tarante was live. That did not happen as Borges looked pretty comfortable. As for Gstaad, we actually did call a pretty big upset as we called Halles to beat Struff in that first match, and he did. Ended up winning in straight sets. In fact, he never got broken. Halles has looked very good when they're qualifying, so we picked him to actually make it to the semis at about plus 750, and he got there. He looked great, simply put. Ended up not getting broken, and now he's going to try to continue the Cinderella run, trying to beat Berrettini in the final. That one we did get wrong, though. Tsitsipas had owned Berrettini in the head-to-head. He was up, I think it was 5-0 or 6-0, and Berrettini beat him. 7-6, 7-5. So either way, Berrettini's serve has been very, very dangerous in this event, and pretty much nobody can break him. And Tsitsipas was not able to break him in this match. So either way, Berrettini, good job. Of course, I got to recap our actual outright picks because we still have a couple of guys that are live for the matches on Sunday. But nice job, Berrettini, who has not dropped a set in the entire tournament, and Hallis, who made a Cinderella run through qualifying into the final. As for the final two matches for Newport, ended up seeing Mickelson beat Opelka, 6-2, 6-0. So we got that one right, having the money line as the lock play for the show. And then for the last match, we were wrong about the actual side, but we did like the over, and we did like the over 2.5 sets that got there, as Giron did beat Eubanks in 3 for the right to face off against Mickelson in the final on Sunday. So quickly going to recap our outright picks for the tournaments. So for the event in Gstaad, we still have Berrettini at 6-1. So we still have action in that event. For Hamburg, we have Zverev. So we still have action in there as well, as we gave out Zverev at a pretty cheap price at plus 187. But we still have him to win the event. So far, 2 for 2. Hopefully those two come through. For Bastad, we have nothing. As Nadal and Borges, we didn't take. So we have nothing there. For Newport, though, we do have Giron at 750. So once again, we do have outrights who are left in the final for 3 of the 4 events. Hopefully all 3 of those come through. We will see what happens on Sunday. Nothing else to really recap, though. For the matches on Saturday, now it's time to keep it rolling for the matches on Sunday. But before we get into that, do want to remind you once again that we are brought to you by Hamburg Fantasy because they just launched their college football best ball product. First place wins $20K. Plus, they have higher or lower pick and pick eights, which will allow you the opportunity to win 3 to 5 times your entry. You can use specials and boosts on all flexed entries. And if you want to use some potential entries for their pick eights, recommend checking out some baseball options because WNBA is in the middle of the offseason. You might be able to actually get Olympic basketball, so keep that in mind as a potential option for your entries, but keep that in mind. Use the promo code SGPN to cover special pick and first-time deposit offer up to $2 bonus cash on a fantasy promo code SGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. And of course, Circa contests have no rake. Circa Millions pick 5 NFL teams ATS each week and compete for $6 million or survive that have a gauntlet to claim the $10 million prize. Set up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th. Use a proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. Don't have a trip booked yet for Las Vegas for football? Ultimate Contest Weekend is a great time to go. Hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events, the world's best sportsbook, from August 22nd through the 24th. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished recapping the Saturday action. Now it's time to move on into the Sunday matches. So the order of matches is going to be the same order that we've had for the last couple of days. We are going to do Gstaad, Bastad, Hamburg, and Newport. So keep that in mind. That's the same order that we've had for the last couple of days, and that will be the order we use for this one. So to preview the first match in Gstaad, you have Berrettini taking on Hallis. A reminder that we have Berrettini at 6-1. So we're already priced in, and he's currently a minus 350 to get the job done in the final. Hallis, though, the qualifiers had a solid run, is plus 280. For the game spread, you have minus 3 for Berrettini, plus 3 for Hallis, over under 22.5 games. He's around minus 140. Face off one time in the head-to-head. It was very dated, though. Face off back in 2015. Was on clay. Hallis did win that one in, I believe it was straight sets. But it was 2015, so I don't know if it actually matters. Point is, though, it was a 6-3, 7-6 final, but he can kind of toss it out as that was roughly 9 years ago. Berrettini, though, has not dropped a set in the entire event. He's had a bunch of breakers, though, but his serve has been too good to actually break. Beat Katchin in straight sets of the breaker, beat Galan comfortably, then beat Felix with 2 breakers, and beat Tsitsipas with a breaker and a 7-5. Hallis, though, has dropped only 2 sets in the entire event, including qualifying. Dropped the first set to Funio in qualifying, and since then he has dropped 1 total set in his last 5 matches and the last 2 sets in that first match. So he's been on fire, simply put. So Hallis has been on a roll, and we'll see how he looks in this matchup. Berrettini, though, is a former champion, and that's why I picked him to win the event. He's had a very good year based on actual success. The issue is he's not played many matches based on injury. I think Berrettini's serve will probably be too much for Hallis to handle, but I think facing Struff is good preparation for this matchup. Now, I do think that Hallis can win a set here. I'm not going to tell you that Berrettini's going to destroy him, But I do think Berrettini not dropping a set in this entire event and beating Felix and Tsitsipas on clay, two solid clay players in straight sets, does tell me that he should probably get the job done in this matchup. I think for the sake of the actual value, though, I would lean to the over. I think Hallis can win a set. I think he can force a breaker. He's been very solid serving-wise, and he's not gotten broken, or he did not get broken against Struff in the semi. So with that being the case, I do like the over in this matchup, and I am going to lean to the favorite to win, but I think Hallis can potentially get the job done or maybe even force a breaker. So I don't mind plus 3.5 games at minus 135. The issue is if Berrettini serves first and breaks, then you end up getting a 6-3 set in there, and you need 3 sets to win. But I am going to lean to the spread for Howells. I think he can keep it close, but I think Berrettini eventually does get the job done and does lift his second title here. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Bastad, which is one that a lot of tennis fans are going to pay attention to because Nadal is going for a title in 2024 as he takes on Borges. Now, Borges is a pretty unexpected finalist for this matchup, as Nadal's around minus 220, and you see Borges at around plus 190. For the spread here, you have Nadal minus 3.5, Borges plus 3.5. The over-under is around 21.5. For the over 2.5 sets, you have plus 145. That's also the odds, by the way, for the Berrettini match, which I forgot to mention. For the actual set spread, though, Nadal in straight sets is around plus 115. Borges to win a set is minus 145. Now, they've never faced off in the head-to-head. Borges is in a pretty emotional spot as this is his first ever ATP final. So we'll see if he can deal with the nerves of potentially winning his first ever ATP title despite being in his late 20s. So we'll see how he looks. But Nadal, of course, has been here before. The issue is stamina, as he had to go 3 sets against a Djokovic and against Navone. So that is a bit concerning, though we know Nadal is definitely equipped to handle it, and we'll see how he looks into this matchup. Now, Borges had the opposite path of Nadal because he has been coasting, dropped the first set to Rocha 6-1, and then he's won 6 straight sets. So he has not been on the court for that long, and he's been very comfortable without much drama. Nadal has had a bunch of drama as he dropped the first set to Navone and the first set to a Djokovic. Facing off against the qualifier into the semi and going 3 sets is not exactly a great look, but it's still a win nonetheless. So I am going to give Nadal props for rallying after dropping that first set, but that does imply that he's not exactly in the best of form, and fatigue could be an issue after playing 6+ hours with no days off at the age of 38 in 2 straight matches. So without the lack of rest time, I am concerned for Nadal stamina-wise, but he's still, in my opinion, a worthy favorite at minus 220. I think he's going to win. I think that Borges can make it interesting, though. I'm going to lean to the over. I think that Borges can win a set. Nadal's gotten off to some slow starts, dropping the first set in back-to-back matches. Maybe Borges can sneak into a first set win. I think Nadal's going to get it done, but playing 6+ hours at 38 with no time off is concerning, and I do think that Borges has the game that translates well to these courts, actually. I don't exactly know Borges as being a great clay player. I know he beat Musetti earlier this year on clay, but he has looked sharp here in Sweden, and I think that he can make the match interesting. Give me a 3-setter, and I am going to go with the over because of it. I don't mind the over 2.5 sets at plus 145, or play it safe and go with the over in games at 21.5 at minus 125. Moving on to the next matchup, you have Fils taking on Zverev, which should be a very fun matchup in Hamburg because it's actually a rematch of last year, as we saw Zverev dominate in Hamburg last year, winning in straight sets. Zverev, though, is minus 300 in the rematch, and Fils around plus 250. For the game spread, you have minus 3.5 for Zverev, plus 3.5 for Fils. Over-under is around 22.5. For the over-under in sets, you have once again plus 145 on the over 2.5. For the set spread, you have Zverev minus 1.5 sets at minus 105. Fils plus 1.5 sets at minus 125. So they're kind of expecting Zverev to win pretty handily in this matchup. And based on the head-to-head where Zverev is up 2-0, I can understand it. They faced off in Halle, actually, on grass, and Zverev did win that 1 in 3. Zverev, though, did drop a set to Gaston. Only set he's dropped as he's currently won 8 of the 9 sets here. So he has been comfortable, and he has not dropped a set, and he's not dropped more than 4 games in a single set in each of the last 2 rounds, beating Zhang and Martinez pretty comfortably in the quarters and the semis. Now, as for Fils, he's been very good here. Dropped the first set to Munar, and he's won 8 straight sets since. I'm going to include the set against Rune, where Rune ended up quitting, as he was already up a break. He was up 4-1. He would have won in straight sets. I'm going to count that personally. Point is, though, Fils was able to beat Rune handily, 6-4, 4-1, and he beat Baez 6-2, 6-2. He dominated against Baez on Saturday, in my opinion, the most impressive performance of the Saturday card. So I do understand why Zverev is a big favorite, and the fact that he's German, he won the title here last year, and he beat Fies in straight sets here last year, and why he's a big favorite. However, I think this Fies is a bit different. I think Fies has looked very, very good over the last couple rounds, and I do think that this line does appear a bit disrespectful to me, at least based on the spread. I think Fies can win a set here. I think that he's good enough to actually make the match competitive, and I think that based on his current form, if he looks anywhere near as good as he did against Baez on Sunday, he's got a shot to win it, in my opinion. So I think that Zverev, despite having a solid run here, really hasn't played anybody. He beat De Jong, who's not great. Beat Gaston, who can be feisty, but we know he's not a great serve based on his small stature. But he's still a solid clay player. That went 3 sets. Zhang was a good win in straight sets. I'll give him props there. And Martinez did go on a Cinderella run to make it to the final. But the point is, I do think that Fies is a step up in competition based on current form. And Fies did have to go through Baez and Rune. So he's been tested. And he's not dropped a set against that competition. So I think I am going to link to Fies, actually, for the value. Do I think Zverev's going to win? Probably. I don't see much value, though, at minus 300. I think the value would be on Fies to keep it close. I don't mind the over 2.5 sets, maybe Fies plus 1.5 sets at minus 125. But the line feels disrespectful, and I am going to give credit where credit is due. I was waiting for Fies to have his moment in 2024 because of how good he was in 2023 as a young player, and he was awful for the first half of the year. But he's pieced it together, he's looked sharp, and he has kind of rekindled some of the firepower that he had last year, and I do like his current form. So give me Fies, potentially being undervalued here. I'll lean to the over as well. I think you're going to end up seeing a competitive matchup. If I had to guess, Zverev in 3, but I am going to go with the over as my main pick for this one. Moving on to the last match for Sunday, you have Giron taking on Mickelson. A reminder that we also have Zverev at plus 187, and we also have Giron at plus 750. This is the most even matchup on the board based on the betting odds, as you have Giron at around minus 116 and Mickelson at around minus 104. For the spread, you have minus half a game for Giron, plus half a game for Mickelson, and you have the over-under games is set at around 22.5. The point is you're expecting a marathon between these two, and that wouldn't be too shocking because Giron has been involved in a couple of long matches over the last couple rounds, went to 3 sets, or I should say he beat both comfortably in between, but he's had a couple of 3-setters in this event as he went to 3 sets against Pair, and he went to 3 sets against Eubanks in the semis. Mickelson, though, has been coasting. He has not dropped a set yet. He's not dropped more than 4 games in a set. Beat Cressy 6-4, 6-4, beat Kovacevic 6-4, 6-4, and beat Opelka 6-2, 6-0. So not much time on the court for Mickelson. Giron, though, is the better player, in my opinion. He has made a final this year already, as he lost to Tommy Paul in Texas, I believe, a couple of months ago. But Giron is a solid player. That's why we took him to make a deep run. And I do think that he's in line for a good showing here. So I think you're looking at a spot where Giron is the better player. But the question is, based on Mickelson's great form and the fact that he was able to dismantle Opelka by winning the final 10 games, do I think he is going to win his first ever ATP title? And I think it's a very close matchup. I probably would lean to the over as the cop-out answer, but I do think that this will be a close matchup. I think it's going 3. Mickelson, though, I don't think can play any better than he did against Opelka. He looked incredible in that matchup, and I do think that facing off against an elite server like Opelka and dominating in the return games will give Mickelson infinite confidence to actually get the job done in this final. Giron has been playing good tennis, don't get me wrong, has dropped some sets, though, to Eubanks and to Pair, so I think that he is a bit more vulnerable than Mickelson has been in this tournament. So I think I am anointed to Mickelson at the end of the day. He made the final here last year, did lose to Manarino, and I think that he's going to be on the, I'd say, revenge tour to get the job done in this matchup. So for me, I think I am going to go with the over in this one. The over 2.5 sets is a pretty cheap price, like plus 125, but I think it's warranted. I think it might end up going 3, but at the end of the day, I see a lot of long rallies, and I do think Mickelson is the better server if I had to compare the two of them. So I do disagree with the actual money line at this current price. I think Giron should be a bit of a dog. I'd probably have Mickelson at minus 115, so I'd probably flip the favorites around, but I am going to go with the dog currently at around minus 104, give or take. Maybe you can find even money in this one, but I think Mickelson is right now in better form, and I think that he's in line to look very sharp once again in Newport, because so far in his 2 runs in Newport, he made the final last year and the final again this year. He's very comfortable here, and I think that he has looked like the best player in this event up to this point. So give me him as a slight dog price at around even money. That's going to wrap it up, though, for the actual matches for Sunday. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. But for any of that, don't remind me once again, they're brought to you by Rhythm, because Rhythm is a great source for all of you for your player prop needs, and they have a lot of great options for the British Open. If you're not checking out the AI picks and props for the British Open from Rhythm, you are missing out. Not just outright winners, but they also have top 5, top 10, and top 20 selections. Use their AI caddy to get some great insights. They also have a lot of options to customize your own golf betting model using Rhythm's tools. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportscampbuckets.com, Rhythm, sportscampbuckets.com/RITHMM. Welcome back, everyone, to the Tennis Gambling Podcast. Just finished previewing the 4 final matches on Sunday. Now it's time for the lock and dog picks. For the lock, we actually are going to go to a match prop in Gstaad. Going to go to the tiebreaker prop. If you don't have this, I don't mind the over, but I do think a 6-3 set is potentially possible, and I do think if it goes over, you're probably going to get a breaker, but I am going to go with the breaker instead. Give me the Berrettini and Hallis match over half a tiebreak at -137. Simply put, I think you're going to get at least one set that's going to feature a bunch of holds and probably not any breaks. Going through the actual path of both players, you have seen a lot of tie breaks for both their paths. Berrettini has had at least one tie break in 7 of his last 9 matches. Even in the straight set win matches that he's had, which is every one of them, there has been at least one competitive set. For example, he had a tiebreak against Kachin. He had a tiebreak, just to go through them in order, did not have one against Galan, but he had a tiebreak against Kachin in the first round, had a tiebreak against Felix. He had 2 of them, and he had a tiebreak against Tsitsipas. So 3 of the 4 sets here, 3 of the 4 matches, he's had at least one breaker. And if you want to include Grass, he had a breaker in both of those rounds in Wimbledon. Hallis, though, has had a lot of long sets as well, as Hallis had at least one tiebreaker in 5 of 7 matches here in this event, because he went through, 6 here and 1 in Wimbledon. Point is, he had a lot of breakers as well, and the 2 exceptions in this event were 7-5. So they were on the cusp of 7-6, did not get there. But the point is, Hal's had a lot of long sets because he has been holding very well. Berrettini's serve has been borderline unbreakable in the entire tournament. And with him potentially not being the best returner either, I can definitely expect to see at least one breaker in this match. But I think you're looking at a good price here of about -137, give or take. For reference, by the way, Bet365 does have -175. But Bet Rivers does have -137. So you are saving about 30 to 40 cents shopping around. So I am going to take advantage of it. Give me what I think is going to be a match that features at least one competitive set in the one head-to-head meeting in 2015. Once again, it was 9 years ago. Can't really use it, but there was a tiebreak on clay in that one. But with Berrettini having a breaker in every single match here except for one, and with Hallis having a bunch of 7-6s or 7-5s in matches here, I think you're looking at both of them coming together, getting a 7-5 or probably 7-6, and I do think it's worth the risk here at -137. So give me the over, a half a breaker at -137 as my lock. If you don't have that, then I don't mind the over 22.5 games instead. For the dog, I am going to go to Bastad, and I am going to go with the Nadal match over 2.5 sets at +150. Yes, I know Nadal is a big favorite, and I understand that he is the best clay player of all time, but he's been vulnerable recently, dropping a set to Navone and dropping a set to Djokovic, who is a relative unknown qualifier. Point is, though, Nadal has been vulnerable, dropping sets in back-to-back matches, and he is 38 years old. He's been on the court for 6+ hours over the last 2 rounds with the no days off, so fatigue could be an issue, and Borges has been very comfortable here. Borges has won 6 straight sets, so I recognize the current form that Borges is in. I recognize Nadal being once again solid on clay, but being vulnerable, dropping sets to Navone and to Djokovic. I think the over 2.5 sets here has value, and I think it's pretty telling that Borges to win a set is -145, but over 2.5 sets is +150. I do not see Borges winning in straight sets, so if I am going to eliminate that type of outcome, then getting basically a -145 at +150, if you are blindly penciling Nadal in to win at least one set, I think there's some value there. Give me the over at a plus money price as my dog. So once again, my picks for the Sunday final matches, I am going to go with the over, half a breaker in the Berrettini and Hallis match at -137. And for the dog, I am going to go with Borges and Nadal over 2.5 sets at +150. That's going to wrap it up for this episode. A reminder, for the next episode, we have a couple of other events before the Olympics. We have Atlanta, we have Kitzbühel, and we have Umag. So we have one hard court match, or one court event, in the U.S., and we also have 2 clay matches in Austria and in Croatia. Stay tuned for those, as those should be fun to break down. Other than that, though, until next time, find me on Twitter at Reichel Radio. Find me on the NBA show. Find me on the WNBA show. Find me on the MLB show as well. Until next time, good luck to all of you and all of your bets. Bye, everyone.